Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 23548 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Bureau setting out changes to this week's business. Could I call on Graham Day to move this motion?
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak on the motion. The question, therefore, is that motion 23548 be agreed. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. So we're going to turn now to topical questions. Our first question today is from Ian Gray.
To ask the Scottish Government what consideration it is giving to lengthening the school Christmas holidays in light of COVID-19 concerns.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, Ministers are currently seeking the views of clinicians, public health advisors, the Advisory Subgroup on Education and Children's Issues, local authority partners and other key stakeholders with regard to options around the Christmas period. Ministers are aware that there is a range of views and no final decisions have been made.
Ian Gray.
Well, thank you for that, and I do appreciate that it is a decision which must be consulted on, but we are in December now. Parents, teachers, head teachers need to know, when will we hear?
Cabinet Secretary.
I plan to come to a decision at the earliest possible opportunity. We have been embarked and engaged in consultation over the course of the last 10 days or so. I discussed the issue with the Education Recovery Group last week. And obviously there's been further discussions with other stakeholders, and I will come to a conclusion at the earliest possible opportunity.
Ian Gray.
Perhaps the Deputy First Minister could show some of his working and explain to us, for example, what is the purpose of such an extension which he's considering. Is he considering additional holidays or a period of remote learning or blended learning? Will hubs be reinstated for the children of key workers, and what will the impact be on the viability of the exam diet?
Cabinet Secretary.
With the exception of the last point, all of those issues are under active consideration in relation to this particular issue, because the question of whether or not the period in which schools are closed at the Christmas period can either be extended by extending holidays or by putting in place requirements for remote and blended learning. And I certainly on that point, my view firmly is that we want to avoid any sense of learning loss for young people as a consequence of an extension of the Christmas period. A couple of the arguments that are material here are essentially in the pre-Christmas period. Some schools will be rising for the Christmas holidays on Friday the 18th of December. Some will not be rising until Wednesday the 23rd of December. There is some concern in the education system that teachers and head teachers who are already very tired might still be dealing with the implications of contact tracing as late as Christmas Eve or perhaps even Christmas Day to notify outbreaks. And obviously there's a wellbeing issue there for members of staff and for everybody else involved. And then in the post-Christmas period, there is going to be, I think inevitably, a degree more social interaction within household settings around about the Christmas period with the announcements that were made last week. And the question then is it advisable to delay the return of schools to avoid the recirculation of the virus? So these are some of the dilemmas that we're wrestling with. There is no easy way through these and no universal view across the education system. But I will come to conclusions at the earliest possible opportunity.
Thank you. Jamie Green to be followed by Ross Greer.
Thank you, and I thank Ian Gray for bringing this to the Chamber. I mean, schools break in a matter of weeks. It's astonishing that we still are having this discussion and that parents and teachers don't know what the plans are. If a decision is made to extend Christmas holidays, that will come as a concern to many working families, especially our key workers and on the front line. Will the Cabinet Secretary make serious consideration of proposals to reopen key worker hubs throughout the Christmas and New Year period, and will he guarantee that any teaching days lost over this extension will be made up for later in the academic year?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I've already answered the point on teaching days, that I don't want to see any loss of teaching days, so I answered that to Mr Gray a second ago. And in relation to the hubs that were put in place over previous holiday arrangements, we obviously have to look with great care at the fact that members of staff are contractually entitled to a period of leave at Christmas time, and therefore to reinstitute hubs for the entirety of the Christmas holidays would then require members of staff who are entitled to their holidays not getting their holidays at this time. So there are a lot of practical issues that have to be wrestled with. I've discussed that issue with local authority partners, and we will, of course, come to conclusions at the earliest opportunity.
Ross Greer to be followed by Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Those who pushed for increased flexibility and a relaxation of the regulations over Christmas have to appreciate that something needs to compensate for what will inevitably cause an increased spread of infections in that period. But if Parliament is to effectively scrutinise whatever decision is come to, we need all the evidence on this to be available to us. So can I ask the Deputy First Minister, is closing schools earlier before Christmas being considered, as well as a potential extension of that into January? And I accept that we're talking about remote learning, not an extended holiday here. And most critically, will modelling of any of these potential options be published for Parliament to effectively scrutinise?
Cabinet Secretary.
Certainly, I think I answered one part of Mr Greer's point in my response to Mr Gray, whereby I said we were looking at the possibility of, for some schools, closing earlier than planned before Christmas. Mr Gray will appreciate there is variation in the school holiday dates around the country. A large number of authorities rise for the school holidays on the 18th of December, but many more, or many others, I should say, continue into the following week. In relation to the publication of information, I'm very happy to publish a statement which explains the basis upon the decision that we end up taking. It is, as I said in my original answer to Mr Gray, informed by the views and evidence produced by clinicians and public health advisors, and I listen very carefully to all of the thinking that they provide for me on issues of such sensitivity.
Beatrice Wishart to be followed by Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Even before further changes to term dates, this year was anything but normal. Every pupil in class is experiencing a different level of disruption, and some have had to self-isolate multiple times while others haven't missed a minute of school. So as we approach the Christmas break, will the Cabinet Secretary accept that pupils can't walk into exam halls next year with an equal shot at success? Will he end the uncertainty, announce that higher and advanced higher exams won't go ahead, and establish a credible alternative ready for when pupils and teachers return in the new year?
Cabinet Secretary.
As Beatrice Wishart will be aware, I am actively considering these issues. The latest evidence that I have indicates that about 75% of S4 to S6 pupils have experienced no interruption to their learning in sense of having to self-isolate or to be affected by COVID in that respect. That raises questions, and obviously there is continuity of learning can be provided for those young people, and I would expect that to be the case should there be any disruption. But I am very acutely focused on the issue of equity that Beatrice Wishart raises. It's material to my decision-making around the hires and advanced hires, because I have to be satisfied that every young person, no matter their experience of COVID, is able to have access to the full opportunities for learning and teaching, and therefore position themselves to be in the best place to be able to perform in any exam diet in the spring. So that issue of equity is central to my decision making around the higher and the advanced higher diet. I'm gathering evidence on this subject. I quite appreciate the necessity for early decision making on this question, but equally I hope Parliament will appreciate that I have to be able to look at a sufficient volume of evidence to be able to come to an evidence-based conclusion.
And Claire Adamson. Claire Adamson. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're able to get Claire Adamson, so we're going to move on to question 2, Mark Ruskell. And Mark Ruskell also joins us remotely. Mark Ruskell for question 2.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its involvement with BiFab, following reported comments from the company's owner that Minister's statements had been inaccurate or untruthful.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop, who also joins us remotely.
It's not for the Presiding Officer, it's not for the Scottish Government to speak for JV Driver as the majority shareholder in BiFab. The situation at BiFab is a culmination of a number of issues, the main one being the unwillingness of the parent company and majority shareholder JV Driver to provide the working capital investment or guarantees for the company. As a minority shareholder, we have been exhaustive in our consideration of the options available to us to financially support BiFab, and we've worked collaboratively as requested with the UK Government to explore what investment was possible in terms of working capital and guarantees, and we have not identified a legally compliant way to support the business.
Mark Ruskell.
Speaking this morning to the Parliament's Economy Committee, DF Barnes's president confirmed again that the deal struck in 2018 made the Scottish Government the main financer of BiFab, and that the company offered to make the Scottish Government the majority shareholder at BiFab at no additional cost, but this was turned down. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, was the Scottish Government aware of this financing commitment when it agreed the deal with DF Barnes? Did it understand the need for guarantees to secure contracts? And why did it turn down the opportunity to become the majority shareholder some time ago?
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
So there are a number of points in that question, very important points. Now, clearly, one of the issues originally with BiFab was concerns around the Beatrice contract, and indeed it was the Scottish Government who took on the main responsibility of finance for that contract. Then we had converted our loan into equity to support the newly acquired BiFab acquisition by JV Driver. The original agreement in terms of the business plan had a number of factors in it, but it also particularly included a commitment from JV Driver to provide working capital investment and also guarantees, and to use obviously the parent company in terms of that acquisition of bonds and assurances. So that's on the aspect of the original aspects of agreement. The second point is about shares, and would the transfer of shares provided an opportunity for compliant legal investment. Now, I've said to Parliament on a number of occasions, we have examined and exhausted so many different ways of looking at what could be provided for the company, including state aid ownership. And that would obviously mean the transfer of shares to the Scottish Government. But even on that account, we would not have been able to provide additional further investment for the company. So the idea that somehow that would have provided more flexibility for the Scottish Government to invest further capital into the company is not the case. It's just not the case.
Mark Ruskell.
On the 17th of April 2018, the then Cabinet Secretary Keith Brown told the Chamber, "We are confident that BiFab has a bright future." He then went on to say that the agreement gives the workforce, the company and the government the best chance of securing a vibrant future for the Yards. So, it's understandable that the workforce and communities in Fife and Lewis feel really bitterly let down by this most recent betrayal by both governments. And the J&B Union have said that there's a clear lack of political will when it comes to creating jobs in the renewable supply chain. How does the Scottish Government intend to rebuild the confidence here? What will it do now to secure the much needed jobs at the BiFab yards in Methil, Burnt Island and Arnesh?
Cabinet Secretary.
So to the workforce, I would say that we want to make sure that there will be jobs for you, but it has to be built on a firm foundation with a company that is prepared to provide that working capital and investment, and importantly, as we know for contracts in renewables, the assurances that are needed. The political will is absolutely there, and I am personally committed. And indeed, when you look at the statements that were made previously, at that time, there certainly was an initial contract that could have been assured. Indeed, even as recently as this time last year, there was a prospect of Seagreen and NNG But in my first answer to Mark Riscoe, I talked about the culmination of different factors, and obviously the delay in a number of these contracts, Sea Green and LNG, also compounded the cash flow issue for that company, which is why back in April the discussions took place, secured in May of this year, to extend the working capital provided by the Scottish Government to £15 million. So in terms of where we go from now, we need to make sure that there are changes made to the procurement issue. The UK Government is consulting on the contract for difference. That's their responsibility. I talked previously about we can't allow that to be a race to the bottom where cheap labour from other countries can undercut us. I have also got agreement from the UK Government to establish a working group. My view is I think the trade unions should be part of that. We should have a term of reference which is looking at the supply chain across, not just Fife and not just Arnish as well, but other areas to make sure the opportunities are there for blade work, but also other aspects of renewables. So there are opportunities. We want to secure them, but everybody has to step up to the mark. That includes the companies that are doing the procuring, but also we need to do that as the powers currently still lie with the UK Government. And these are all issues I've already raised with the UK Government as part of establishing that working group. So we must have jobs in the renewable. I'm committed to make sure we can do that. And I will make sure that we use every part of that partnership, including working with the trade unions, to make sure that we can achieve that.
David Torrance.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Since 2017, the majority shareholder, JV Driver, has failed to make any investment in the company, despite robust support and investment in excess of £50 million by the Scottish Government. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that a failure of JV Driver to provide any working capital investment or guarantees for the company has proved to be a major obstacle in securing a bright future for BiFab, and that it should step aside and make way for someone who is unwilling to invest in the company?
Cabinet Secretary.
The decisions on the future of the business, including its strategy, operations and management, are really for the board of directors. But clearly what we want to see for the young workforce is that there's a way forward to ensure that the investment that's required, the working capital that's required, can be delivered. But I have some sympathy with the points about investment, because obviously the perspective is that the majority shareholder would provide some of those issues, particularly around working capital. And some of the issues, particularly latterly in the last few months, is the precarious nature and the cash flow issue, and our concerns that making decisions for further Scottish Government investment in terms of the assurances had to be made at a point in time when there was obviously severe concerns about the working capital cash flow investment position of the company at the time.
Thank you. I'm conscious that there are quite a few members who wish to ask a supplementary, but I'm afraid that particular session took a bit longer than I planned. There's a debate coming up tomorrow if members wish to ask further questions.